Testing?
Space, the final frontier. These are the podcasts of the Starfleet Night Shift. Our continuing mission to discuss Strange New Worlds, TM. To review Star Trek in all its iterations. To boldly talk about Trek we've all seen before. Where's my echo? There we go. Got it. All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Night Shift. We are here today, clocked in for our evening of Star Trek discussions. I'm going to point out, Merrick, the screen. Oh, there we go.
Solid.
Nice.
I'm Science Officer Azure down here in your... Oh, God, I got to look at the screen. Bottom right. Up above me is our Captain Merrick. Across from me is our Commander Justin, and diagonally from me is Chief Jennifer. And we're here today to bring you our normal sort of rambling discussions about all things Trek that we're interested in, starting with a topic that's a little bit sad, but will hopefully lead to some really cool discussions. And I'm going to let Merrick introduce that topic for us.
Hi guys, it's Captain Merrick. Sorry for the technical difficulties. It is a sad day for Star Trek. I think we've had a lot of talks in the last 24 hours since the loss of Louise Fletcher, who died at the age of 88 in her home in France yesterday on the 23rd. In case you guys don't know, she has, been a prolific actor and done a lot of incredible things. But I think for those of us in the world of Star Trek, we will always remember her as playing perhaps one of the most polarizing villains or antagonists that we've ever seen in the history of Star Trek. I think it's broad enough to say that that's true. She's definitely one of those characters that no one ever forgets, that you absolutely love to hate, right? That's always been the case. I think she represents sort of a lot of the nuance and morally gray area that was in particular very strong on Deep Space Nine, which I think actually separates that show from a lot of the other Star Trek that's out there. But she played such an important role in that and is just phenomenal. So to the friends and family of Louise Fletcher and all the fans around the world, we miss you. Rest in peace. It's very sad. But it got us discussing it, which I think is great. One of the most amazing things about this franchise that has been going on for so long is that, these actors, people that have participated and contributed to the world and universe of Star Trek, they will really never be forgotten and never not be celebrated in this franchise, in the fandom, the people that have been loving this for so long. And as we know, we just celebrated 56 years of Star Trek at the beginning of this month at Star Trek Day. It's incredible it's been that long. But as a result, we have lost a lot of amazing people, a lot of, actors and people behind the scenes that have made Star Trek what it is today. And one of my favorite things about this, and we mentioned this last week actually on the podcast, is right over there we're in Star Trek Online, the MMORPG about Star Trek. But that I'm pointing at right there, that is actually a monument that has a list of names of people who we've lost in the world of Star Trek. Actors that have participated in the franchise, and some of which, I'm happy to say a lot of which, participated in Star Trek Online and done voice acting here and have since passed. So there will always be memorialized. I think that's the greatest thing about the fandom, is that people love this so much. It's so near and dear to them that however peripheral your role might be in the landscape, the greater landscape of Star Trek, you will always be appreciated for that contribution and never forgotten. So Louise Fletcher, absolutely true of you as well. And since yesterday in our Discord, and you guys should definitely come join the Discord, discord.gg/Star Trek Night Shift. We've had a lot of good discussions about sort of her and her role, and also what it means to have such a strong villain in the realm of a TV show and what that has kind of meant for various things of Star Trek. So I thought we might kick off our discussion today talking about antagonists in the role in the world of Star Trek and how that's impacted various shows, if it's made them stronger, if it's made them worse, some funny stories that went around there. So let's talk about, what having a good bad guy that you love to hate can do for a show. What is everyone's favorite villain? I mean, I feel as though I want to say Kai Wynn, who is, that was the role that I should say Wynn Adami, because she played basically a Vedic and then eventually a Kai and then eventually neither. We got to know her sort of as a human being. I think she had a really long breadth there. So a Bajoran, yeah, okay. Underneath all of that, a Power Wraith sympathizer, shall we say? So what are your guys' thoughts on villains in the shows? What's meant a lot to you?
Well, I think I would start by saying I agree. Kai Wynn, incredible. I don't even want to call her just a villain, because I think throughout a lot of it she was just a good antagonist.
Yeah.
We've already made clear in previous podcasts, but just in case you're not aware, spoilers will abound here, so if you care about spoilers, I'm about to give you a big one. She is clearly a villain by the end of DS9. But I think DS9 itself deserves a lot of credit in having some of the most engaging and interesting villains out of any of the series. Gul Dukat, Wynn Adami, questionably, maybe sometimes Garrick, but not always. And
the entirety of the Dominion, maybe, and
female changeling, also very good.
Mm-hmm.
Although a little less multidimensional than some of the other ones, in a good way. Like, it's fine that that's true.
Well, I would say, just to riff off what you said, I think that is what makes DS9 so special, right? Those characters are all... Wouldn't you say, like, you brought up Garrick as being sort of like ambivalent? Not ambivalent, but like he's a little bit of A and a little bit of B, and you kind of like questioning it that whole time. Mm-hmm. I'd say that's true of like the vast majority of all characters in that show, wouldn't you?
Oh, for sure. I actually think Wynn Adami is in that position, in that I think she is a... I don't even know what the exact word I want to use is. She's a surprisingly... not sympathetic. She's not quite that relatable, but like you can kind of understand her frustrations and her drive, and like if I were this person who was thinking that they might someday be the leader of a world religion, and it turns out my gods essentially decided to pick this outsider and never spoke to me, like I would probably get a little frustrated and like a little confused about what's going on with my life.
Well, right, exactly.
Absolutely
Especially, true. And that's why, spoilers near the end, that's really the catalyst for her, because she was on the line for a long time. Like, yes, obviously she was out for her own means, and she was willing to do things that were not great to get what she wanted. But it was really at the end there, like she was still against the Pirates, which, against like evil, right? For the whole time, like even though she had not good motivations, but then finally at the end, like you said, Azure, her gods basically, like she lost faith at the end. I think that's really what it was. She lost faith in the prophets that they would ever give her any sort of attention or see her ever. And when she lost faith in the prophets, that's when she turned to the Pirates. Because I think that's the only, like she was, and whether like the motivation was that she was just like, well, she realized that she would never achieve what she wanted to achieve by worshiping the prophets, or if she just felt so terribly betrayed that spurred her on to make this huge like moralistic change in her life.
I think that's a really great explanation.
Yeah. There's definitely moments where she loses faith. She kind of has only faith in herself. She loses faith in the prophets, and then she eventually sides with the Pirates. And then one of the greatest moments is that glimmer of redemption at the very end, right? I mean, that really happened. She, at the very end, in that last scene, it was a "what have I done?" Mm-hmm. And then she gives it to Cisco, doesn't she? Doesn't she say, emissary, the book, right? She tells him that she gives that moment. And I like to think that in that moment she redeems herself. Then maybe, that's the beauty of the prophets in general, is that they are non-linear. Like maybe she had this role that she was supposed to play, not to get too deep in all of this. Well, no, just not to get too deep into stuff that isn't technically written about at all. But I can absolutely see that might be true, right? She plays an important role, and it's very clear that this trial that is happening, and it's really hard to tell a story when you have non-linear beings that can see everything. But like, if they knew that all this was going to happen, and there were prophecies and the trials that they saw that were going to happen, wouldn't you say that all this could be necessary, and that her role in that might be something that was needed? They had the power wraiths locked away, but they were finally defeated, and a new golden age for Bajor was accomplished. But one of my favorite things about Adami is I was sitting there thinking in my head while you were talking about the entire evolution of that character. And this is a credit to the writers, and I think to TNG being the first truly serialized Star Trek, right? I mean, that makes such a difference, because the evolution of that character is enormous. I can tell you, you could write a whole book about this character and how and what has happened to her. Remember, we know her history through the occupation, right? She was in concentration camps. She, through her own admission, had to do things that she didn't want to do, because she was basically being persecuted, assaulted, tortured for her defense of the prophets, because she was a holy woman going through the occupation. It was especially hard for her. She went through all of these things.
Yeah,
she
I remember
came
that
out of that. No, please.
I remember that scene when she's talking to Kira, and she's like, you had your weapons to defend yourself. I had only my faith.
Yes. Oh,
I remember that.
Yeah, that's profound, right? That's super profound. That moment between her and Kira. In fact, I would say that the relationship between Adami and Kira helps define them both in such an awesome way, right? Like they both went through the occupation on different ends of the spectrum. She comes out a soldier, having done a bunch of things that, just to get the job done, the ends justify the means. That's the real essence of it. The ends justify the means, and she's still dealing with that. And Adami comes out of the occupation having been the same thing, but dealing with it through the lens of faith and politics, and the ends always justify the means. Now, Kira goes through this entire series experiencing some growth about that, and that's actually another one of the greatest arcs in that series, is that her dealing with her PTSD, with the crimes and traumas that she experienced as a soldier in the occupation, and does a lot of growth through that, which then gets reflected to Kai Wynn, right? She sort of was like, hey, why don't you could do that too? Like, we all had to do this. There were moments where she reached out, and she was not able to make those steps forward like Kira did. So I just to go back to the essence of it, I think Kai Wynn is one of the greatest villains, and I'm going to give the same thing to Gul Dukat. Okay, Mark Alaimo's Gul Dukat is the same thing, which is that we know these characters' entire lives. We've seen them make strides towards good and strides towards evil, towards selfishness and ego and power, but then also moments of possible redemption. And that entire tapestry that is woven about both of those characters makes for such nuance, such good storytelling. That's this is where I think a villain makes a show just as much as a hero, right? Starfleet, even in DS9's like Starfleet, like the good guys, the protagonists, they're great, and there's definitely more morally gray nuance here than in any other Star Trek, I'd say, which adds to that layer of complexity. But I'd be willing to argue that the villains of DS9 shaped that series. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, Gul Dukat was mine actually for villains too as well.
For favorite villains,
he was not necessarily favorite villains, but he was definitely the villain that I was always more like. When I watched DS9, I was like, "Oh man, this guy! Like, this guy! Like, what is going on with him, man?" And there's just so many surprising things that happen throughout, and you're just like, "Wow, oh, he's really like that." Okay,
but I think he ends up with, and I don't want to give him too much credit, because Gul Dukat, not great on the quality scale, but like there are some interesting explorations in a couple of the episodes where he's like, the military would have had me do this to the Bajorans, but look how lenient I was relative to like the previous person.
Oh yes.
They should be
thanking
me. They killed 20 people. Yeah. I killed 20 people.
Yeah, but doesn't that lend itself more to the rationalizations of a psychosis-filled mind?
I mean, yes, for sure. I'm not arguing that Gul Dukat was like good.
Well, actually, no, because I remember also when I first watched DS9, and I also had like back and forth with Gul Dukat for quite a while, and then it's kind of really revealed where no, this is just somebody who is kind of crazy. Like there's
that episode where
like you want to put right, you want to put your own empathy and your own motivation, say like, oh well, you know, like he was doing this because of that and that because of that, but like at the end it's like it's just kind of snowballs into the fact that there's really no saving that the mind that's inside right there. Yeah.
But don't you think that the best written villains in history are the ones who see themselves as heroes, right? Like he couldn't see himself as a villain. That was the thing. He really believed it. And more than that, what do you think defined Gul Dukat? It wasn't just that he was purely evil and was convinced that he was good. It was his desperate need for validation for other people. Yes, to see that he was actually the hero of the story, right? Like that he did good for them. He needed that to happen. Kira, right? And Cisco, he needed them to know, both of them, really. And more than that, even his daughter or Damar, like everything was about how other people saw him, and it was so important for him to get that across. And I would say, Azure, man, you nailed it. That episode when they get stranded on the the deserted planet, they were attacked by the Dominion. Gul Dukat saves his life, right? That's a huge thing. He actually saves Cisco's life and drags him from this destroyed vessel to a shuttlecraft where he then flies and lands on a planet with the entire purpose of doing that so that he could convince Cisco of how good a man he is and that they're actually friends. And that whole episode is just genius writing to me. Like we learned so much about him. That was, when you say that was the moment where the facade starts to crack, right?
Oh,
like
absolutely.
It's not just that he's convinced that he's good, but he actually is starting to go crazy in that moment. He's actually seeing other people.
As soon as Jennifer said the word like psychosis, I was like, oh, that's the episode I'm thinking of.
Yes.
Yeah.
He starts to talk to multiple personalities, including Kira, who's there, right? He's talking to Kira, and desperately trying to convince Cisco that they have so much in common. And that just made him the greatest villain. He was an absolute lunatic, but he truly believed, he was a believer. And I think that's why it was so, I don't know who sat in a writing room one day and was like, persecuted the Bajorans' occupation of their homeworld, and then
but considered himself a savior to them somehow.
Considered himself a savior, and then eventually turned the corner and become the emissary of the paw wraiths, right? Essentially, like that was who sat down and wrote this, man. I mean, we know who they are, but they're like amazing. Like to me, that was so ahead of its time. My God, the last episode and the first episode and everything in between, nothing conflicted. It felt like they were drilling towards this great grand tale the entire time. And this was in freaking 1993 or something. Like no one was doing that, man.
Well,
there was no Game of Thrones out there.
Yeah, that was what really got me about DS9, because I watched it much later, all at once, like in order, and I was surprised at how like crisp and tight the whole plot was. And you're right, you can see it from the first episode to the last. Like everything gets wrapped up in a way that was so ahead of its time, and I would put it up against like so many of those similar things that we have today.
Yeah, it's a greater kind of storytelling that I think was just really, really ahead of its time. In fact, we were talking about this earlier. I'm trying to get everyone to watch a documentary called What We Left Behind. Sorry, I'm going to have to harp on it in the actual thing. No, what we left behind is an amazing. We were just talking about this, but it's an amazing documentary made about Deep Space Nine that really delves into this stuff because they were fully aware that what they were doing was crazy. This is actually one of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen because back when Deep Space Nine was out, it just wasn't very popular. It wasn't very successful. They had 3 different Star Trek shows on at the same time. DS9 was never independent. It was overlapped by TNG and then by Voyager. And they really didn't get to do everything, or they really wanted to do all these things that the studio and the powers that were in terms of Star Trek didn't want them to do. Being serialized, having war, conflict with characters, the warship Defiant, which is essentially what that was completely against the rules. They fought for this stuff. They went into politics and religion and same-sex kissing and stuff. There was a lot of stuff that they were really trying to push for and constantly doing battle with the studio. And I love these stories because at the time, they felt like they were sort of like the middle child that no one liked or paid attention to when it came to Star Trek, which was pretty true. And because they were not allowed to fail, because Voyager was the big, for those of you who don't remember, Voyager was the pilot ship it was the absolute big flagship for the United Paramount Network. UPN was coming out right then. They put all of their eggs in that basket, and they couldn't very well cancel a Star Trek that wasn't doing as well just before the introduction of Voyager, which was supposed to do so well. So they were sort of on their own, had a full 7 seasons, and got to do stuff that they probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. But no one really watched and no one really liked. And it wasn't a big deal because no one was watching serialized television, making sure they saw it every week. So it wasn't until just the last few years that there was an entire resurgence of love for this show. And a whole bunch of people discovering how good Deep Space Nine was as soon as it was bingeable on Netflix. And our culture is used to binging things in order. It was a totally different experience. And when they came across it, they found that they had this huge influx of support and passion behind their show that they didn't have for decades before that. And it gave them a bunch of money and the ability to put together this amazing, and it is amazing, guys. Last time I looked, it was free to watch on Amazon. You guys should definitely check it out.
It's on YouTube movies now too.
Is it really? Okay, definitely.
I was just
even
Googling
easier.
it because I was trying to figure out where to watch it.
Yes, we should do a watch party of it, man. We'll do a watch party in the Discord. I think that would be a great idea. But it gave them the ability to say a lot of the things that they've always felt about their show and the experiences that they had. And it's a great watch. They talk about this stuff, these characters, these villains. Well,
we're focusing pretty hard on DS9 here, and I think there's a good reason for that. One, it's hard to have a well-developed villain in something like TNG. Right, because it's not serialized. You don't experience the same enemies week after week, or most of the same characters outside of the bridge crew.
Yeah.
But I do want to bring up one other DS9 villain just to get your guys' feelings about them.
Uh-oh.
Michael Eddington?
Oh,
good villain?
Oh no!
I'd like to apologize to myself and everyone for not bringing this up already. Excellent call. My God, talk about moral gray area. Crap, dude. The Maquis in general, which was personified by Robin Hood-esque Michael Eddington, who, by the way, I adore. I love him. I'll let someone else speak, but he's great.
Justin, thoughts on Michael Eddington?
Yeah,
he betrayed his uniform, but other than that.
Yeah, I'll just never forget that one moment where Sisko confronts him, and he's about to shoot off that torpedo into the planet.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just you think I won't do it? Having that whole standoff. And
I thought that was a great
God, dude. Yeah, that was insane. I thought that was insane when that was going on.
When I think about Eddington, though, I think almost more about Sisko's reaction to him, where it brought out something in Sisko that he didn't like that. He brought out something negative in Sisko and using Eddington as a means to further develop Sisko's character. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, you know who he brought out in Sisko? Javert. He actually manifested exactly what he said. He was 100% correct. He brought out this super dark side of Sisko And it was absolutely real. I mean, he didn't imagine that. He wasn't just taunting Sisko. Do you remember? And we can't think of it in a vacuum, right? I always, when I watch this, I like to think that Sisko is reacting this way because of Eddington. But remember, it's also building from his experience with Cal Hudson. You remember Cal Hudson? Mm. It was his best friend. He introduced him to his wife.
Working in the demilitarized zone.
Yes. This was his friend growing up. They came up together in Starfleet, and he kept trying to give him his uniform back. Remember, he took it off, and he was going through, and he basically became a Maquis and forced Sisko to fight him. And then the culmination of Eddington, the greatest scene is when he's boxing. He's actually hitting the bag, right? And Jadzia is holding the bag, and he's going off about what it is. He's like, "This man fooled me." And what is my excuse? Is he like a supreme being, like a Q with better intelligence? No. Is he this or that? No.
He says wormhole alien at some point.
Wormhole alien? Yeah. He's like, no. He's just a man like me, and he beat me. You know, he was so mad, and that level of humanity that we get to see from Sisko as a captain. Right? I mean, like, that's big. That's part of, I would say that's probably, there's a lot of things that define all the various commanders of each show. But if you had to say, what is it that defines Sisko? He's like the realest person. Like, you see all the shades of him all the way through. If you don't walk away from In the Pale Moonlight thinking, man, this guy is a product of his environment and not exactly the paragon of Starfleet that we've all come to know in Picard, then I don't know what'll do it. I mean, that was such a crazy thing. Eddington played such a role in the development of that character.
Wouldn't you say that could be said for the episode with Q when Sisko...
Picard never hit me.
Yeah.
Picard never hit me. Yeah. I'm not Picard.
Just like the different ways that the captains interact with Q and how they deal with Q.
Yeah.
Would you consider Q a villain, though?
So I was going to bring that up. I think it's fair to label him as an antagonist. I wouldn't call him a villain.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. I'm with you.
But he's definitely an antagonist, right? Like, he's the motivation for much of, underlying motivation for much of Picard's like TNG stuff.
I love that you say antagonist, because whether you consider him a villain or not, I'd say that he antagonizes more than anyone that we've ever seen. He's so antagonizing. Yeah.
I also, like, deep down, I absolutely love Q, partially because I really like John Delancey. He's been in a couple of...
Oh, absolutely.
I love John Delancey. Yeah.
Love that man.
Well, also, I love where the Q episodes go in Voyager. I feel like it really reaches its best almost in Voyager and all of those storylines that happen with Janeway.
Mm-hmm. Well, Janeway, I also like the one where the other Q is trying to like end his life, and they have like the trial, and they visit the continuum.
Mm-hmm. And I got to say, that was a very artistic plan to show the continuum and show it in that way, but I sort of enjoyed that. I liked the way that they showed it. I loved the inclusion of the other Q. I thought he did a great job. Mm-hmm. And like Jennifer, I feel if it hurts me to say, because TNG definitely has the best Q episodes, but I do think, very much like Worf, that the actor and the writers got the best grip on the character, and it was the most comfortable feeling for Q in Voyager, because they knew him so well. He knew his character so well. That level of cocky brazenness that he pulls off, it's the most convincing in Voyager, and is so good. But like all the great villains that we talked about so far, right? And I can't wait to get to other ones in TNG, because that, I think, is the real evolution of this process. But every villain that we've talked about so far has been super nuanced with good things and bad. Michael Eddington was literally fighting for his people. He saw himself as Robin Hood, and he went out in a blaze of glory, and he really was trying to protect the people that he loved. It's hard to say that he's a villain. It didn't align with the Federation. All of the Maquis fall under that category. You could even say that the Dominion falls under that category. At least the changelings themselves fall into that category. They were heavily persecuted, and now they're doing things in the way that they are because they want order, because they want to stop other people from being tortured in that way. There's so many things like that in Deep Space Nine. And Q is one of the great examples of this, because I was just started watching like TNG the beginning again. And he comes in really like unceremoniously enters the world of the Federation and is like, oh, by the way, on this random thing that you're doing, thou shalt go no further. You are on trial. Humankind is terrible. Then we find out that they sort of like admire, maybe even fear humankind in some weird way. And then we have all these goofy episodes. By the end, though, we cannot skip over the fact that Q, directly or indirectly, is sort of responsible for the saving of the entire human race. I mean, how does it go in All Good Things, the final episode of TNG? I mean, he assists Picard to solve that problem, right? Isn't that, there's no real other way to interpret that, is there?
No, I mean, I think that's exactly what it did.
Yeah,
well, I like when a lot of the villains or antagonists, they have like a level of complexity that really challenges all the characters that we know and love. Especially for Q, because like when you take a look at Q and everything that he's ever done to antagonize them, there's always been a lesson at the end of it. You know, some sort of observation they have, or that sight of fearing humans and their development and their growth and so forth like that. It always brings out the best in their characters, as if every other character has done themselves too, right? So or the villains and antagonists. So I think that's really cool. They were able to really construct these characters the way that they did and write them the way they did, instead of just giving us characters that are just easily like, oh no, I hate this, and then just blow them up later. You know what I mean? Like there's a level of when you take a look at these characters and you're just like, I can see that. Like I can take a look at that in that perspective, and you're just like, you know what? I understand that now, and that's what makes you a great villain. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, the level of nuance, and I think the ability to relate to them, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna use that as a jump pad to sort of go back in time, right? Like we all started this with Adami, because she was so nuanced, right? Her and Gul Dukat, I think, were two sides of the same coin that just built such a great story. But if you go back in time, like if you picked out the big villains through Star Trek, there's a thread up until this point. There's a very specific thread. Klingons, as we know, right? Let's go back to the original series. Klingons and Romulans being like the real first villains that we ever kind of come across in Star Trek. And while we have come since to be able to relate to them, right? Like that's what it really comes down to. Can you relate to them? Is there any redeeming quality that allows you, the viewer, to relate to them, at least on some level? And the answer in TOS is no. And that just wasn't the kind of TV show that was on air at all in the 60s, right? That was a different time. It was good guys and bad guys, right? There was no real redeeming qualities. There were no good Klingons out there. They were all just bad, and they didn't really have a reason for being bad, at least not one that was explained to us. The same is true for the Romulans. Even worse. They had no real reason. They were just trying to blow up everything and take over everything. And then Khan. We can't have this discussion without Khan, right?
Yeah.
Now, you can say The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek II, in the original series movies, one of the greatest movies, one of the greatest villains in all Star Trek. I think most Trekkies would agree that that's true. And in that particular movie, he's motivated by revenge. And revenge in this case, and in most cases, is at least somewhat relatable no matter what the cause, right? Some wrong was done to them, and while we don't like their reaction to it, revenge is not good, right? Like just doing something bad to someone else because something bad was done to you shouldn't be, that's not the Star Trek moral here. But while we may not like that, in most stories with revenge, you can at least relate, right? You can be like, wow, I have empathy for you because this terrible thing happened to you. Mm-hmm. So I can see why you would do, like, it wasn't good for you to do that, but I can see why you're doing it. And that adds at least a basic level of complexity to a character that we hadn't seen in most of Star Trek before that. But what was the first introduction that we had to Khan? It was basically like he's in Space Seed in the episode of TOS. He's found and rescued, revived, and educated by the Enterprise, only to have him try to take over everything and kill everyone. He was the megalomaniac, the original megalomaniac. He was described as like a Hitler, but basically genetically engineered Hitler, right?
Yeah.
So he was basically just pure evil. So going all the way through TOS, there's not a lot of nuanced villains. And then, oh no, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I'm just remembering something though that was said about Khan in the original series, that because remember they kind of romanticized him a lot.
Well, she did.
No,
What's her name?
no. Yes, she did, but that was a whole other thing. But even the bridge crew, even Kirk and Bones and them romanticized him, because there were scenes where Spock was like, "How are you possibly seeing anything positive in this person?" And they mentioned things like, "Well, yeah, he was a dictator, but he was like a slightly nicer dictator than the rest of the warlords that were during the genetic wars at that time." And so they kind of like, in this very strange way, sort of rationalized, well, okay, well, at least he treated his people well, so he was like one of the better ones. And they actually romanticized him as well.
Well, yeah, they gave him respect, I think, and I think when he came to power, right, it was just like it was at the end of World War III or something, and he's
a conqueror.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, there's so many times like that in history where some giant catastrophe ends up happening, and they, someone who is a strong enough personality, even if it's not altogether altruistic, right? They're out for their own ends, but that can somehow fix or repair or at least give order back to the world, right? And I think that's what they said that he did, that he was capable of that. But I mean, there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He was definitely a dictator, one of the worst. A very bizarre stretch, in fact, that they shoved him in a shipsicle and sent him out into space. Like that was the solution. It was a very odd way for that to end. But yeah, so TOS doesn't really give a lot of that nuance. But how do you guys feel about TNG villains outside of Q? Do you have any thoughts about those?
Hold on, before we go to the TNG part of it.
Oh, okay.
What about the other Khan?
Oh, you mean in like the Kelvin?
I'm talking about the Kelvin Khan. That's another one too, right?
Okay.
I mean, we take a look at that.
More relatable, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
You take a look at that Khan, and that's a little bit different too. And I think we've had this discussion before outside of the podcast, where we take a look at the two Khans, right? The one from the original series and everything, and then we take a look at the one from the Kelvin timeline, and it's like it's a level of there's a lot more of a level of intellect that you see in the Kelvin timeline one, where he's a lot more like you can really engage and see how how this person can be, when he's in in the Kelvin timeline, where he's just using his mind more so than his physique that you see in TOS. Because you gotta have to acknowledge the chest, man. Like the way that he was in TOS and in Wrath of Khan. I mean, geez, this guy was just like, you could tell he had so much more physical strength, even in the fight scenes, right? In Space Seed, right? You could just tell that he was just so much more superior. But in the Kelvin timeline, you take a look at the superiority, not just in physical strength, but intellect as well, right? But at the end of the day, there's that similarity, or that same, what brings them into that same level of the same character that you see, where even Spock says he has, two-dimensional thinking. Right, and that's the same answer that you see, that they're able to kind of stop them in the same way that they did originally, right? So,
I also really appreciate that scene when Spock asks other Spock, right? When Kelvin Spock asks Prime Spock, "Did you ever encounter someone named Khan?" And it was this great moment, because he's like, "You know what? I vowed I would never give you information about your future." That being said, and he says it just like that, right? He's like, reluctantly, Khan was the greatest nemesis that we ever faced. And it really was like, I for some reason, when I watched that, it had been a long time since I'd seen TOS movies, since I'd seen the movies. And I was like, that might feel like a little bit of a stretch. They did so much in the original series, and that was just one episode. But that's not fair, because in the movie, that was the most traumatic thing they ever went through. That killed Spock. It killed Spock. I mean, that was definitely like... And they almost died from that whole thing. They lost so much from that. Khan literally was one of the greatest villains ever. and had one of the greatest chests ever, as Justin pointed out. Ricardo Montalban, fun fact, showed his chest in the movie and in the show. And in the movie, right, when he's an older guy at this case, in this time frame. And he's been, what was he on? He was on that TV show for forever. What was it called? Jennifer, it was like Fantasy Island or something. I don't know, something weird like that.
Yeah.
So he was on a show that had nothing to do with like that at all. But there was a big conspiracy theory that the chest that he had in the movie was a prosthetic. Everyone thought it. It was this huge thing. Everyone thought that he had this fake chest because it was so impressive. But he's had many, many interviews about it, and he just said, I just did like hundreds and hundreds of push-ups a day. I mean, he did so many push-ups. It was just constant amounts of push-ups. But I just to follow up on what Justin said, it's true. I would say that Kelvin Khan is an altogether different character.
Would you say that Kelvin Khan is the ultimate villain of our time versus when the original series Khan movies were made and when the original series was made? Because think of the way we are different in what we consider powerful now. We used to, back in the 60s
it's
and
no
before,
longer about pecs.
Right. I mean, that concept of that villain or that man or that really powerful presence in physicality, I think that's been changing over the decades. And I think we really consider like intense villains that are able to do massive amounts of destruction and have massive amounts of power are more aligned with like intellectual power now, and the means for that material power, right, over necessarily just physical brute strength, which is what it was more so at that time.
Yes, I completely agree that that's true. I think you and Justin made a very good point with that. He's much more intellectual, and bringing in a character or an actor like Benedict Cumberbatch, right, who I adore. I think he was awesome. I think there was a lot of like, why did you whitewash this character? Or like, he doesn't look like him, didn't feel like him at all. I actually think that the character was great. And for the exact reason that you're saying, actually, because I really believe that we needed to redefine what we thought was a very intimidating, genetically enhanced character that had to feel differently than, remember Spacey, the episode. The woman goes into great detail. It's entirely about like likening him to
Napoleon.
Yeah, exactly. Characters like that. That was what they were trying to make him feel like. But that's not scary to us these days. Like if you were to genetically enhance someone in the realm of Star Trek and have them be a great threat, it wasn't his brute strength. It was his great knowledge and his ability to do all these different things. And I thought that was represented really well in that movie. But more so, what made him a better villain and a better character to me was that he was more relatable. He actually had his own people that he was trying to protect, and that was when he got a little bit better in the movie. Also, remember in
the Wrath of Khan. Right, yes. When you find out why he's so angry, because had they put him on the correct planet, or I forget they did put him on the correct planet. It was just that it had a problem. Like had that not been right, had that not been an issue, he would have accepted those terms and just created a civilization on that planet, and nobody ever would have heard anything from him for a long time, maybe after that, or not for generations.
The real vendetta was that they didn't go back and check on him. That was why he was gone. They dropped him off. Apparently, it was like, but that was the problem. Apparently, it was like 6 freaking months later. Like it was so soon after they dropped him off or something that it all went bad. And he lost his wife. Remember the woman that they sent down from the crew of the Enterprise? She died.
Yeah,
and they lost a huge amount of them. And he was very protective of his people. And I think that they leaned a little harder into that in the Kelvin movie. They put that more at the forefront. Right, one of my favorite scenes in the Kelvin movie in Into Darkness was, right, when they're on Kronos and he comes in kicking butt, man. He's got the giant minigun and he's just ass whooping Klingons everywhere, right? And then finally he walks up to the crew of the Enterprise who are there to apprehend him. Clearly, he's got this. It's no problem, right? And then he yells at them. He's like, "How many torpedoes did you have?" And then they say, and then Kirk doesn't want to answer, but Spock is like, "That's a weird question," and answers it right away. And he immediately surrenders, like very just pointedly surrenders. Yeah. And you're like, oh, there's something deep going on here. And that that really is what makes a good villain these days. You need that. You have to be able to relate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
the Kelvin Con was really cool, man.
You were starting to ask us about, and I'm interested to hear people's opinions about villains from TNG.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
Do we have? I mean, it's where the Borg was first introduced. So I mean, we can't not talk
no
about.
Skipping ahead. No skipping ahead.
I was going to say, can we talk about the most menacing villain?
No, Ferengi.
Oh, the Ferengi. They changed so much. I mean,
For the better.
They were just like little.
Way better.
You know what the Ferengi reminded me of in that first episode of TNG?
Yankee Traders?
No, it was almost like it was almost like they were portrayed as like goblins. Right, like in a D&D campaign when you're getting goblins attacking you, but they were like extra fierce goblins.
Yeah,
were they though? I would say maybe less fierce goblins.
No, they did damage though. They were able to capture them, so clearly they were like more.
I don't know. They had whips and they did a lot of this.
Yeah, their electric whip things. Yeah,
it worked though. I mean, right? Like they were able to capture them, so they were like extra good goblins.
So I definitely want to get into this, and Ferengi could be an entire podcast because I feel so strongly about them, and they've changed so much, and I love them, I adore them. But and what they represent in the realm of Star Trek, I think it's a nuanced discussion. But to give some context for the beginning of Star Trek: The Next Generation, there was a lot going on. The cast and crew and the writers for TNG were trying to redefine what Star Trek was and start a new chapter. It was a big deal. They were trying to do that amidst the fact that there were a TOS movie still being made. I mean, that's where this was. They wanted it to be very different. The very first thing they did, remember, it was the motion picture that reframed what Klingons were. They looked different, they acted different, they talked different, they had the ridges, everything changed. And so all of a sudden they were brand new and not explored, but willing to be completely changed. Like it was the original series that did it, and then TNG was like, we're going to have one on the bridge. Klingons could no longer be the big bad guy in the background. They were now going to be humanized. We were going to understand them at least. Even if we had difficulty with them, they couldn't be the big bad scary threat because we were going to learn more about them through the entire show through the eyes of Michael Dorn's Worf, right? We were really going to get that. It wasn't going to be that. They wanted something brand new. It wasn't going to be Romulans either. They wanted to redefine Star Trek themselves with something new, and they completely hand-picked designed the Ferengi to be the big bad antagonist of this brand new socialist utopia Star Trek, right? Because that's what this really was. The Next Generation was the pinnacle utopia of everything that Star Trek was going to be, and that's what they wanted it to show. And so what you could just imagine the writers, right? Can't you see this? They're sitting in a room. They're like, okay, money is gone, want is gone, greed is gone. Just bettering yourselves in the universe, like that was the whole thing, and they harped on that. Wait, that wasn't in TOS. TOS was more military. They were very military. The TNG redefined itself as this utopian, socialist utopia thing going on. So, what if you were a writer? Were you sitting around a boardroom table, thinking, okay, what is going to be the villain of our new perfect socialist utopia? Greedy capitalists.
Well, as we all know, greed is eternal.
Greed is eternal, which is, of course, one of the rules of acquisition. But the Ferengi were supposed to be this big, bad, scary threat, and that's how they pitched it. How do you guys feel like they did?
What does anyone know what acquisition rule that is?
No, not that.
Not at the top of my head.
If anybody's watching right now, you should totally put it down in chat or in the comments.
I want to know.
I don't know. I just don't know.
I do know what episode it shows up the most, and it's the Voyager one.
Yes.
Oh, yes. When they, and in fact, and again, Ferengi could be an entire podcast, man, because that is one of the greatest things that I've ever seen happen in the history of television.
The follow-up on a TNG episode with Voyager.
7 years later, dude, or some huge amount of time. 2 television shows later. The Ferengi show up in that episode, and by the way, that was maybe the very first episode that they started to change. They were no longer being taken seriously. They weren't scary. They were comic relief. Do you remember that? That was the auctioning of the Barzan wormhole.
wormhole.
Yes, exactly. Nice, Azure. So they brought everyone in, and the Ferengi were excluded from these talks and were irritated and showed up. We're like, we would like to complain, like protest the lack of involvement. Who's got the chairs? Remember
Didn't they assume that Worf was supposed to get the chairs, like your Klingon servant?
Get your Klingon servant to get us chairs. And then they go back and forth, and then Picard's like, you can sit down and you could be part of these negotiations, and you may have my chair. Just such a great twist on the character, because I think we skipped ahead a little bit. But what was really funny about the inclusion of Ferengi were that they were cringe, and they were. And one of the very first Ferengi that were ever made was played by Armin Shimmerman, who eventually ended up playing the savior of all Ferengi, right, as a race. Amazing that's how that ties together. It's no wonder that the fandom is as obsessed as Star Trek fans are because of all these things.
They knew that because in the Deep Space Nine episode, Quark has like little action figures of like the old Ferengi with the whips.
Oh my God, Marauder Mo! It was Marauder Mo action figures.
I forgot. Oh my gosh.
Dude. Yeah. And they pull him out. He has them at the end of the episode. And Moogie says something to the effect of, if you would have listened to me and left them in their packages, they'd be worth a lot more money. It's just one of the greatest things. But so basically the Ferengi come out and they're terrible, right? They're not fun. They're not scary at all. We're just rolling our eyes at them from scene one. I mean, there was nothing intimidating about them. Even the episode, was the first episode we saw them. Their ship was cool. And remember, they were like racing away and then we were chasing them and then they got stuck. Like there was intimidation until the moment their face appeared on screen. And it was immediately gone from first episode. So they knew it wasn't going to work. This was not going to be the antagonist. And remember, antagonists carry a show. It was not going to define Star Trek Next Generation. And they panicked and they had to redesign something completely different, which ended up becoming
Merrick.
Merrick.
That's right, Merrick.
Merrick of Borg. You guys can see my Borg cubes up there. Which defined maybe, or which created maybe, or instigated the creation of maybe one of the greatest sci-fi villains of all time, and completely complicates this discussion.
Oh
because
my gosh,
every single thing that I just said about what makes a good villain does not apply to the Borg. They are faceless, nameless, and aimless. We don't even relate to their goal. They are just they're not even like
They're also the opposite of capitalists, though. So they took the Ferengi that they made these like capitalist things, and then you're taking socialism to an extreme, right? Because like it's all one hive mind.
A collective.
Wow. Yeah, the collective mind. Yeah. Individuality erased,
completely
right? So
gone.
that's fascinating.
So
I had never thought of that.
It goes to the other side of Next Gen's Starfleet.
Dang. That blows my mind. And all that is definitely true. But what I always like to describe with the Borg is it's not like Khan, right? It's not like there's a guy and he's got a motivation and that's scary. Like we're scared of him and what he can do. You kind of experience the Borg like a force of nature instead, right? Like a giant storm.
They get described like that in Voyager.
I mean, they do have the Borg Queen. They have the Borg Queen, but it's more of like a symbol of like the core of the hive, right?
I mean, more to your point, Jennifer, I would say that the Borg Queen addresses that issue in storytelling. That there really is no, like they gave us the Borg Queen to give them what they were lacking before, which was a face, which was a name, which was a motivation, which was a persona that we could battle or defeat intentionally. It never meant anything, the destruction of a Borg cube. What did that mean? We don't know anyone that's on the Borg cube. There wasn't a defeat of an enemy. That was just, you cut off a toe of some giant that you can't see any of the body of. Like we had no idea what was going on with them until
that's what made them so scary.
And it was always implied,
I agree. Yes,
right?
Azure.
And it was always implied too that there was no way to defeat the Borg unless you got rid of all of it. It was almost like an extermination kind of thing. Like there was no way like to defeat them until the Borg Queen and the development of the Borg and things like the cooperative. Like that was the only way to turn it into something where we could defeat them without annihilating them.
Yeah. And then of course, even though we've defeated Borg Queens, like we realized that there's more Borg Queens. So even that wasn't really enough, but it was, I love to talk about the Borg not because I'm a Borg sympathizer or anything. But the Borg are very fascinating enemies, and throughout the entirety of TNG, they remain that super scary. This is actually the most serialized event in TNG. The inclusion of the Borg, the destruction of the bases along the neutral zone, how they were vacuumed up and everything, that happened way early. I mean, they built up to that. That was kind of a surprising thing for us, right? We got them in the best of both worlds. No, it wasn't the best of both worlds. It was Q
throws them
Q
in front of the board.
Yeah. What was the episode called?
I don't remember what it was called. All the Q episodes get mixed up for me.
Oh, someone's gonna hate me for this.
He launches them in there.
Yeah, into the Delta Quadrant, right? Which is ironic now because that's where we know they're from, and we end up experiencing in Voyager. But so basically, he Q who is it? Q who? It might be Q who. He launches them out to the Delta Quadrant, sees them, and we don't know anything about that. And then they leave it. And then there's this huge season-wide build-up, basically, like the Dominion, where we end up seeing them again. But throughout all of TNG, they remain this nameless, faceless thing. But people don't really realize that while you think of Locutus of Borg first, or First Contact, and that's what you think of when you think of Borg, almost everything we know about Borg, almost all of it, is learned and experienced in Voyager, not in TNG. Voyager is the ultimate Borg experience, and that's where all that great stuff happens. And it isn't just the Queen; it's 7 of 9, and the inclusion of like Unimatrix 01 and all of that stuff. We get tons of insight that is incredibly profound, and that's I think that in TNG, since we're still on the TNG villains here, going from the Ferengi to the Borg could not have been a bigger shift. But what was so fascinating is that I just love that everything we just spent an hour talking about in the complexity and the significance of the nuance in the villains is what makes a good villain. And the Borg come out and say, "What about me?" Because they are completely breaking that rule and are still one of the greatest villains ever. Hold my Romulan ale.
And even in TNG, though, remember when they first presented the Borg, instead of showing us it right away, like they kept it a mystery. They showed us the fear of the Borg through like people's reaction to it, like what people like experiences they had with the Borg, and then thinking like, oh my god, like they're terrifying, they wiped out all of these races, and then we just like a lot of it was like that unknown element too.
Yeah, and I think that's what speaks to it, right? The unknown is sometimes much scarier than the known. It's easier for our imaginations to come up with something that we find scary than it is for a producer or director or actor to convince us that we're scared of whatever it is. So sometimes the nameless, faceless is the scariest thing.
Well, see, even on that note too, remember when Q was introducing the Borg to Picard? It was when he was in that when they were in 10-4 with Guinan. And he's like, you have no idea what's out there.
Oh, wait, I can do the
and Guinan, too. Yeah. Like, Guinan's reaction and what she said. And when you see somebody like Guinan, who is usually very calm and collected, has this hatred toward this enemy, it changes something. Because, like, you have a concept of what Guinan's like, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, if she hates the Borg, then they have to be seriously bad.
Yeah, because she doesn't hate anything.
Doesn't she basically give them the advice of, like, turn around and leave now, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, destroy them or run. Yeah, because that's it. Like, because they won't second guess anything, which is so weird from Guinan, right? We've had a whole season of her by now being that voice of reason. And then here she's like, nope, there's no reason here. These guys destroyed my entire race, and they don't want to talk to you. They don't want anything to do with you. They just want to absorb you, right? That made it scarier to me. Also, I thought Guinan was going to shoot a fireball or something. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was a crazy episode.
I love that episode. That was great.
I do too. There's a meme that shows like her doing that and Picard looking and says it was at this moment that Picard realized that Guinan may have overestimated her combat abilities. It's too funny. So I would say those are the things that stand out to me the most as villains in TNG. Of course, there's a myriad villains, and they do bring out things like Romulans, right? They bring them back in the end. Klingons, of course, are like sort of what I love in Star Trek, where things are a little complicated. You know, like Klingons are allies, right? But you know, there's friction basically. But the inclusion of Sela, which we have been seeing in our weekly playthroughs of Star Trek Online, we just got to the Romulan arc. Sela, one of the greatest characters, I think, one of the greatest villains to come out of at least TNG, where she not only reprised or was a beloved actress reprising a semi-role, but also one of the greater stories and a villain that is really relatable. I mean, she definitely has some trauma put on her. She had a really weird backstory. And I thought that was good. I thought that story allowed room for so much of that. You know, that was the reunification. That brought in the Romulans. That brought in Spock. There was just so much that sort of got to play off of that, which I thought was good.
Nice. Reunification. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
And then they did Reunification 3 and then in Discovery, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was wild.
It's not even called... You know, I keep forgetting. Because, I think I need to go back and watch Discovery 2. But they don't even call it Vulcan.
No, it's Navarre.
It's not Vulcan. There it is.
Ooh.
Navarre.
Someone's watching Discovery right now.
Right?
No, I already finished.
Yeah.
Oh,
there you go.
But it was recent.
I got to go back. I have to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
It's been too long. I've actually only seen Discovery once, which is not true of any other Star Trek out there except for Picard for me. Every other Star Trek I've seen multiple times.
Yeah, I've even seen Lower Decks 2 or 3 times.
How did you guys feel about the Borg Queen and Picard then? And it's like, is that the same Borg Queen as what we're used to, or are they all just different Borg Queens?
So they explore it a little bit in Picard in the sense that like there's like the Borg Queen chamber and you can travel from one to the other. So I was always kind of under the impression that it's supposed to be the same queen, like even if it's like a different body and a different like, incarnation. I always assumed it was like the same entity.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Which it might be. I don't think we've ever been told one way.
Out. Right.
That whole season was crazy, right? I've often said there's a lot of ups and downs that I have with the season. But if you took the first episode and the last episode, it made for a pretty freaking awesome Borg two-parter. You know, like that was pretty awesome. That character.
I also.
Okay.
No. We're on Borg. I'll get to mine in a second.
I was just gonna say that like that character as herself, not totally my favorite, right? She ends up killing a character that I really liked. I won't go into that, but she's sort of like this crazed energy source throughout the entire thing. I feel bad for her sometimes. I'm frustrated by her at other times. It's a nuanced character, like I think is everything in Picard. It's so hard to deal with absolutes or absolutely like something or absolutely dislike something in Picard. But I thought that added to her character a lot. That little journey that she went on, I think, is the best thing that she experienced in the entire show, both seasons. And let's be honest, guys, that was the canonization of the cooperative. That's really what it was. It was in Star Trek Online, the MMORPG, which really plays like a parallel plot line to basically all of Star Trek canon and history. Which interweaves with it constantly. It's for those of us who play a lot of STO, it's hard to even like draw the line that defines them now. They're so interchangeable.
Roz just jumped up behind Jennifer. Sorry.
More so
Roz just
than
jumped
ever
up
before.
behind you on the shelf.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, he did.
Watch
out!
I love it. I love it.
Oh.
Anyway.
But in general, I think that the cooperative was sort of defined in STO as like the Borg that are still part of a network, but are now good, right? They're altruistic. They're protagonists now, and there's enough background, I think, to support that kind of thing, and that is what we sort of see at the end of Picard. So that was, for me, that was my favorite part of the whole series of the whole season.
Oh, I was going to bring back another antagonist we've talked about. The ending scene between Picard and Q was like my favorite part of that whole.
Oh yeah.
How did we not bring that up when we were talking about Q? Oh my god.
I was waiting.
I was
going to wait till we got to Picard.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Heartbreak. I mean, I wasn't ready, dude.
I'm upset. I'm just upset because I don't want him to die.
No, I know.
It's just to me, like, he's such a beloved character.
Yeah.
Overall, my dad, like, especially for my dad too, like, if you can name one character that is ultimately his favorite of all time, it's John Delancey, and that's cute. Yeah, like, you know, and to see that happen, I mean, not trying to throw shade at Picard or anything, but how could you kill the character that we love so much, you know?
Oh, but they hugged.
They did.
Yeah, but that's
They
like the
did hug.
last we're ever gonna get, unless, you know, and you know, Q has a son. Can we get that then?
Oh, that's
like,
true.
No, and
Yeah, we
where
get
was
kid.
that, by the way?
Like-
Where is little boy Q? Come blow your horn.
You know, there's just a lot of things that I have so many questions on, and you know, even with Icheb, I mean, isn't
Oh my
Q's
god,
kid?
Icheb was so
Unforgivable.
I mean,
That
isn't
was
Q's
there was
son?
no reason.
Unforgivable.
Are they
to hurt
best
Icheb.
friends? Like, does that not send a rift to?
Oh
Q's
yeah,
son?
little baby Q.
Like they're like best friends.
They were besties,
yeah,
bro.
Like
That
they're
was
besties.
so.
I'm
I like
you
to
know?
think that something did happen and he was saved by Q. We just
Right.
don't know about it. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe we'll
yeah,
experience it
it's
later. I don't
true.
know. But that was very upsetting. I will
Yeah.
never forgive Picard for that. The show Picard for that. That felt like an unforgivable thing to do.
Yeah.
I do love the inclusion of that relationship with Q and Picard because crap, you guys, there's just no ignoring that that's true. Like you look at Q in a vacuum, right, from episode to episode, and you're like, okay, he's like this annoyance, right, and Picard hates him. But over the years, over all of the episodes, including the last episode of TNG, right, all good things. That really drives home, I think, sort of like the relationship that they have. They've gone through so much. Like Q obviously has been infatuated in some way with Picard all the way through, but how about the episode with the flashback with his heart, the stabbed through the back?
Oh yeah.
We never brought up that episode, and oh my god, that is like the greatest gift to give to anyone. He's on the table, he's dying, and he wants something different, and it's Q that shows him his entire life and the decisions that he made and what it would have been otherwise. And
But
I mean,
but also
that's the
taunts
ghost
him
of
immediately
Christmas.
before it when he's like, "This is the afterlife."
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, I refuse to believe that the universe could be so badly designed that you are God. Like, it's such a great speech. I love it so much. But yeah, their relationship is important, and it's built for a long time. And I think that I never saw it coming. I'm going to give the writers, you know, I don't always love everything that happens in Picard or in Discovery. It's an ups and downs thing, you know, because it's definitely, I think it knows that it is, right. They're taking gambles every week, so we know that they're feeling that way about it. But one of the greatest credits I can give to them is that was not on my table. That wasn't anything I was looking for. That wasn't anything I've ever even considered. And yet, nothing that I've even in my nerdy little mind that have been daydreaming about Star Trek since I was a kid, have I ever conceived of this moment. And yet, it is, as of this day, one of the most beloved moments in all of Star Trek for me, is that happening. Like, they came out of nowhere with that to acknowledge the relationship between them, and all of a sudden it made so much sense. It made so much sense that they had that relationship, and it's important, you know. So that was really cool that they did that. Took me by surprise.
I loved it.
Is it safe to say that I'm wishing that in season 3 that just like the Q comes back and he's just like, just kidding.
Just kidding.
Like, you know what I mean?
I want it because I love John
Wouldn't they kind of
Delancey.
trivialize the
Yeah, please don't
experience?
ruin that moment.
Right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to see a reaction from you. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
All my marbles is now with Will Wheaton,
yes,
since he's at like such a higher power.
Right.
So yeah.
happened to the stream?
so
It's still up?
any other big villains from TNG that we need to cover or want to cover? I guess we don't need to.
I'm
From
sure there's
TNG?
I can't really think of anything else there that
I mean, there's countless, right? But I think
right. But I just mean like big.
What
must
about
mention.
Professor Moriarty?
Oh, that's a good antagonist, I think.
And he gets more than one episode.
Mention.
he does get more than one episode, and I would say that I would argue that he's probably like the closest example to like such a relatable bad guy that he's barely a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like, don't you completely see his perspective? He's just trying to get his freedom. Like, he's not out to do anything villainous. He's basically just he's a the ends justify the means, except that the means are not world domination. It's literal freedom. And he gets
not just that,
probably the happiest ending of anyone ever.
Well, right. And also, like, Moriarty in the Sherlock Holmes books is a much more villainous character than the one we see in the holodeck. I
like he clarifies that
in
too.
TNG. Yeah, like he's actually already better than what his character was based off of, and he's completely relatable.
Yeah. I thought he was really good. I loved that he tricked them into not realizing they were still on the holodeck.
Yeah,
and then they tricked him thinking that he got off the holodeck. It was genius. The writing on that was phenomenal, so good, and the actor is great. The guy who plays Moriarty,
he's phenomenal.
Yeah, he's so good, man. Even the woman who played the Baroness, whatever it is, I can't remember
her name. I feel like Countess of something.
Countess Bartholomew. Regina Bartholomew, something like that. I don't know. You guys will have to look it up. I don't remember. But she was also really good. I thought that whole thing was amazing. And TNG was so good at telling stories like that, man. Like, let's go to the holodeck for a whole 2 episodes. It's going to be great. And those are some of the greatest episodes. They're just amazing, man. Whoever thought to put Data obsessed with Sherlock Holmes and give him the little pipe? I mean, that guy deserves an award because that is one of the most iconic things that we experienced in Star Trek.
Well, here's another one on Data. What about Lore? Lore's I think is an excellent one too.
That is a good one. And a recurring one.
Yeah.
And a recurring one,
And I would put more in the villain category.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
He tries to sacrifice the Enterprise to the crystalline entity.
Yeah, that's right. But I also thought Lore was really good too, because it's like, you take a look at Data and what's his goal? It's to become more human. And then you see Lore and he's like, well, I can do this. It's tomato, not tomato. And like, he has all these much more expressions. Exactly, that one. So like, I love Lore for that sense, because it's sort of like, you take a look at these 2 androids and they're like, they want to be, they're both goals are sort of the same in being human. But Lore just has he's a little bit more psychotic. So
I love that dichotomy though, don't you? Like, it's the 2 androids that are by their very nature, and this is I think what makes Data such a compelling character, is that he's better than humans, right? Like we see him like that, right? We see like, you are basically better than humans, and you seem to be capable of kindness and incapable of selfishness and villainy. Like to us, we're like, what? Of course you're not completely emotional, right? Like, you have emotions. Like, it feels like that to us, but it seems to us like you can only be good emotions and not bad emotions. And so, but the greatest thing is that, and we talked about this last episode, I think, is that he plays that role that I think is so important and iconic in Star Trek, which is the mirror to humanity. He reflects humanity. Like in TOS, it's Spock, and Spock is not human, but he's kind of human, but he reflects on humanity in this way that he's so different. Data is an even better one, because he's used sort of like, you're better than humans in most ways, and yet you're Pinocchio. Like, he wants desperately to be human. And that is such the message of TNG, is that human is something that we should be proud of being, that the human race, look at what it's accomplished by the year 2370s, right? Like, we've done all these great things. We're the leader of this intergalactic, organization of all these different planets. And we've done all these wonderful things. And Data, who is better than us in so many ways, aspires to be like us. But Lore actually hates people. Like, literally hates people. Like, he's better than people, and he thinks he's better than people. And it's like, it's almost like being given that emotion is what gives him the capability to think, actually, I'm better than you. And if you think that you're better than someone else, look what atrocities you're capable of. Like, that's the real defining difference between those two.
Absolutely.
And it's crazy.
That. And something similar to that was also on the Voyager episode with the other hologram from the other aliens.
Oh yeah.
Fenwick,
I agree. Also felt like he was better than
his rant at B'Elanna.
Remember his rant at B'Elanna? the other hologram program.
You're filthy.
Yeah.
You have to ingest food and
dude, and that actor, oh my god, did he make you feel that? He was so filled with hate, wasn't he, when he said that? I just thought that the scenes where that guy's really going all out, like it makes me physically uncomfortable. Like the acting is
when that
so
episode
good.
first came out, I was like 50% sure B'Elanna was getting murdered in that episode.
Yeah, and you believe it. Absolutely. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
We actually just watched that like 2 weeks ago or something. It was a chilling episode. And again, a really good episode for the development of the Doctor, who, right around this time is really starting to explore those character features about himself. So like it's that, and then he comes and he ends up meeting Andy Dick, and that's a different thing.
Hilarious interaction.
It is so good. It's probably my favorite thing that Andy Dick's ever done.
TNG other villains though, which is a little bit of a link to what we just saw recently too. The butt bugs, dude.
The butt bugs.
No, the butt bugs, man.
From Lower Decks, you talking Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I saw that as a kid, and I remember when they vaporized.
Oh, when the head exploded and stuff.
Yeah, the head exploded and like.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, this is what I'm watching.
Yeah,
right
that was
now.
weirdly
we were
graphic
little kids.
compared to the rest of TNG.
Yeah, exactly. We were little kids, not ready for that. I remember, like, there's that moment where, like, my parents were like, "We watch this every week with our kid," and they like looked at each other like, "Oh, what just happened there?"
God, why are they eating worms? Like, and
the pulsing neck, and then like, oh man,
yeah,
that episode was intense.
Yeah,
and I felt bad
TNG
for
villains?
What was his name? Remick.
Yeah,
was it
I think that's what a Remick.
The dude who was like, he was first. So in the very first conspiracy episode, he's sent to find the conspiracy on the Enterprise. Remember, and he was like such a dick. Everyone hates him by the time he's done. Like Riker just choose him a new one. And then at the very end, he's like, I actually didn't find anything. Great ship. The only thing that I found was maybe a casual sense of familiarity among the crew, but that's not a bad thing. And then he's like, honestly, sir, like once my tour in the JAG office is done in a couple of months, and this is where I'd like to serve. And Picard's like, gives him the cold shoulder, bad dude.
Right.
And he's the one. He ends up being the leader of the creepy things. Like gets his head blown off, man. I mean, I kind of felt bad. Kind of felt bad for Remick.
Well,
Hot take, but
that's the one memory that I have of TNG that scared the crap out of me. You know, like when I was little, I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like,
yeah, that was intense. And again, another weirdly serialized episode. Wasn't there like 3 episodes that led up to that? I just remember there was the one where they all met together.
There's a bunch.
And I, for some reason, her name always pops up. The captain, who's like the fastest to get captain in history, Twyla Scott. She shows up, and then Walker, right? Walker was the like, and then Beverly was like, "Oh, did you see Walker? Walker Keel. Yeah. And so they. I was just telling Jennifer the other day, I was like, I can't remember the day I'm born sometimes, but for some reason, Star Trek freaking trivia is ingrained in my brain.
So what we got to do is train you to know the star date of when you were born.
That's it.
I'll never forget.
I'll never forget. But no, that was a crazy villain. And again, we said it last week, didn't we? The inclusion of this is a huge shout out to Star Trek Online, but this is like Star Trek Online took that storyline and so many others and wrapped them up in something that actually made sense and got to be fulfilled, and not in a cheesy way, like in a freaking awesome way. Like for those of you guys who like Star Trek but haven't played Star Trek Online, my God, you want to like finish these stories in such an awesome way.
Oh my gosh, Merrick, I just remembered. Don't you remember we actually started playing Star Trek Online before I finished watching all of Star Trek?
Oh no, really?
So I knew about the Iconians
from STO?
Weird way from STO, and then I started to see odd connections as we were going through all the Star Trek episodes. Nice. And I have to say, like you just said, like the stories in STO are very solid, and I think they would be legitimate canon in a lot of different ways.
Listen, in my heart, it's canon. Okay, I'm just telling you right now, in my heart, all of STO is canon, every bit of it, because STO will never crap on canon themselves. Like they will never embarrass what's been written. They will only add to it, and I trust the writers to add to it in a cool way. Like to me, that's canon. So come at me, bros.
They've made it more rich.
Yeah, they've added to it. They have
They really have, yeah.
enriched the experience of all of Star Trek story.
Yeah, I would love to see the Iconians in a new Star Trek series.
Well, you know what's crazy? In Discovery, Admiral Vance, when they were trying to figure out what was going on with the DMA thing, he even mentions it's the Iconians. And I'm like,
that's right. They give it a shout out. They do.
Did they shout that out?
They did. I thought that was awesome.
Oh, I was hyped, man, because I'm like, because the moment you hear Iconians, the only thing that I can think about is STO. And I'm like, that whole story.
That whole storyline.
That was amazing. Like,
culminating in one of the greatest plot twists of any MMO story in the history of MMOs.
So good that I don't think we should talk about it.
No, I actually don't want to spoil it at all.
No, I won't. I won't spoil that. It was because it was such a twist.
We had our jaws on the floor when we first did that. We were screaming, dude. I mean, it was like, you always fault MMOs. Like, why can't you tell a good story? Holy crap. Star Trek Online, like the weirdest corner MMO, like telling such a story.
The Iconian storyline in Star Trek Online is one of the best storylines ever.
Yeah. Very, very
hands
good.
down.
Facts.
I can't wait till our stream gets
up to that
in 4 to 5 months.
Yeah, right.
We're getting faster. We're speeding up a little bit.
I mean, you're getting faster since.
Well, we're going to be doing our next.
That's also true.
Our next Star Trek Online story continuation is going to be on Twitch on next Thursday, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Make sure to follow us on Twitch.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get everyone to stream. You can all stream this.
And if anyone else is watching too, if you want to challenge Merrick to a tour of the galaxy race.
Good luck. We still haven't picked a day or time yet. But Merrick, I think you might have to be disqualified for a few weeks after you win each time.
Yeah, that's facts.
Or you have to do the whole tour of the galaxy while doing donuts.
Yeah.
Okay. Backwards. I can do it backwards.
Yeah. Oh, now you're just showing off.
You can do it backwards. I was slipstreaming backwards. Really? Yeah, I was slipstreaming backwards. I wasn't sure that you could, but you can. Because I accidentally passed a planet that I wasn't trying to pass, and I had to go backwards. So it's possible. So for those of you who do play Star Trek Online, Commander Justin here is going to be, and the rest of us, because I'm going to try to pitch in. We're going to be basically funding a weekly Tour of the Galaxy race. So added prizes in our Discord, added amount of millions of EC to the first, second, and third place winner of the Tour of the Galaxy, which we do every day. But once a week, we're going to actually set up as an event with prizes. And then once a month, we're going to set it up with big prizes. It's going to be like a much bigger thing. So it's very exciting. If you guys are not already in our Discord, you know what? I don't have commands in YouTube.
No, gotta type all this out manually.
The difference between that and Twitch.
Its fingers are already tired.
I think you can actually. I think there is a way to implement them, but we have to look into it.
Okay, we'll figure that out. Also, I doubt anyone is watching, but from the Live Long and Podcast crew, shout out to these guys who also do a great Star Trek podcast here on YouTube. They stop by our Discord. Awesome guys. Hit us up on Instagram, which I thought was really awesome. So definitely check out the Live Long and Podcast crew. They do some great stuff all the time. Have you seen their trivia episodes yet? No. They're very fun. Oh, few. Are they? Oh, I want to be a part of that. They had actually, somebody had offered maybe an opportunity for us to come and guest star on one of their things, which I think that'd be super fun. Blast, man. Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, also, give me on the trivia one, because I would love to do that. No, you can trivia. I can't trivia. You need to do the trivia. I can't trivia. And Azure, don't leave out Azure. Azure is you and Azure can go do trivia. Also, I'll be like, what? Welcome to Venwick from YouTube chat. Yo, Venwick, did you join the Discord? Yes. Nice. Welcome, man. Obviously, for anyone who's new to our community, we are built around this podcast. This is the thing we wanted to do the most. There's more going on in the news cycle of Star Trek now than there has ever been in the history of Star Trek, which is phenomenal. And since we were just basically staying up late talking entire Trek podcasts just by ourselves in Discord, we thought we'll turn this into a real podcast, invite other people to discuss it with us. And so we have a Discord community, which I'm super proud of. It's beautiful. I hope you guys will join. We also have a fleet in STO. We do a lot of activities there, but you don't have to join the fleet if you don't want to. We do watch parties every week for Star Trek, and we also do Star Trek Online Let's Plays on Twitch. So we do lots of cool stuff. If you guys want to be involved, I swear to you, it's going to be one of the most welcoming communities you've ever been a part of. We love new people. Yeah. Sorry. All right, like so I said, if you could beat Merrick,
in a Tour de Galaxy race.
Yeah, then you deserve
real money on that. Yeah.
You deserve some accolades.
You definitely do.
So obviously there's a lot more villains to go through, but did we want to shift topics? Azure, did you have another thing that you wanted to pose?
So I almost want to save it for next week because we've been going for about an hour and a half now.
Okay.
And I don't know if I want to get into that. If we want to just kind of do villain wrap up stuff, or like if there's other big villains.
Love Falkirk.
Yeah, we should definitely keep that one for next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I have it all written down. I won't forget.
Oh, there you go.
Well, this one has been super cool for me because of Louise Fletcher. Like, this was all in honor of her and basically the amazing footprint that she left in my very favorite Star Trek show. I mean, if you guys don't know, I'm a Niner for life. Star Trek Deep Space Nine changed me forever.
Where's your hat?
Dude. I just
did like a small
glance for it, but I don't.
Oh no!
I think it's over there. I actually have the Niner hat. I got the from Take Me Out to the Holosuites, which is maybe one of my favorite episodes of all time.
He says he's a Niner, but doesn't even have the outfit in game.
No, I do, and I was even thinking about buying because you gave me the low nut favor.
Oh yeah,
I don't know how to say it. But do you know that they also have vanity shields? The team vanity shields you can get. So I just sadly I don't like the Niners one very much. It's like a navy and orange.
Oh wait, Falkirk from Discord, who's in YouTube chat also, wants us to know about the Opera House hat.
There's an opera house. Oh, you're talking about Vedic Wind's. She only had it when she was Vedic, right? So it was Vedic Wind's hat that looks just like the Sydney Opera House, which I have watched this show a dozen times and I've never thought of that, but it is spot on, right? It looks just like that. That had to have been the inspiration, right? For that hat. How could it not be?
It's an epic hat. I would wear it. I would wear it if I could get one.
It's a great hat. So just to continue on with the villain thing, and I'll let you guys make the shift in a second, but since we're not going to go back to DS9, and I was bringing up the whole the What We Left Behind documentary, one of the most interesting things about that documentary that you're going to find is that Mark Alamo, who played Gul Dukat, actually felt like he was such the villain. He actually felt like everyone on set hated him. And he goes into great detail about this. It's actually a little awkward because they basically got to unpack this in a group, in a room with them all together. It wasn't like the real world where they had him behind closed doors or something talking all this crap. Like, he said it in front of everyone, and everyone sort of unpacked some of their emotions about this, about how he felt that way and why he felt that way. And I can tell that there is some truth to it. Like, some of them tried to downplay it basically, but there were definitely some moments where Nana Visitor was like, who by the way is one of my favorite human beings in Star Trek. I adore her. I think she's so sweet, so beautiful, so talented, so wonderful. She just gets better with age. But she was like, her character, and I think it comes from her character. Her character was supposed to hate this guy and have the most complicated relationship ever with this guy. And do you know, this is gonna freaking floor you, man, because it floored me. The writers were gonna try to write a romantic encounter between Gul Dukat and her.
Oh, and she was
so angry about it. And she was constantly feeling defensive, like she wanted it not to be that, and she was afraid that it was coming, and all of this stuff. And it's like, as long as it's not him, and like, she definitely in those discussions. Tell me what you think when you watch it. It seemed to me like she projected some of that onto Mark, the actual actor. And that he felt some of that stuff. But what they ended up doing is they did like a...
with her mother.
Yes. They exactly. They did like a half measure. They made it so he had hooked up with Kira's mom.
Honestly, though,
and that was the stopgap for that.
But I think that was the right call. I think that was such the right call that she pushed for not having that romance happen, because I don't think it would have been good for her character. I don't think her character would have gone there.
Yeah. Are you kidding? No way.
It would have been it would have been so off for her character. Like, I can't, no.
Well, they
they didn't do that.
They had the moment that I loved where I think it was when the Cardassians had like reoccupied the station briefly, and he like it's his daughter's there, and he sends Kira like a dress and invites her to stuff. and she like laughs at his face about the idea of like him hitting on her, basically.
Well, no, and it was fine in that it made sense for his obsession with her. But
right.
It did not make sense for her to ever reciprocate.
No, I agree, but I just loved the part where she like laughed at him. Basically, it was just like no.
There was that time. Remember, it was the inclusion of Gul Dukat's daughter, right? The complicated relationship with Zial, where, especially at the time when they were all on board the captured Klingon vessel. Do you remember that? Where they were actually on like a freighter at first, and then they take over the Klingon vessel. There was that time where he was like really like, it was around that time, and then again during the actual occupation of the Dominion occupation of DS9, where there was like a couple of moments where she loses track of herself, like in her hatred with him. Like you could almost see the slippery slope, and then being like, maybe, and then it was. Obviously, Nana felt very strongly about opposing that storyline, and good for her, because that would have been not good. But Mark, to his credit, was like, every time I came on the show, I felt like no one liked me and they didn't want me here, and they didn't appreciate me. And the producers, like Stephen I. Ribera or whatever, was like, we showed you that we liked you by bringing you back 1,000 times. We turned you into the great, like the main villain of the whole show. Like you were just a couple off character at first, but you did such a good job. People liked it so much that we just kept bringing you back and bringing you back and bringing you back. But he always felt like he was an outsider. And to me, he's one of the main characters of that show. Like he's a bigger character than Martok, and I think of Martok as like an absolute essential character of that show. Like Dukat, as much just like Kai Wynn, is just a character that you effing love to hate, man. You just love to hate that guy. Like the show would be just a shadow of itself without the two of them. So anyway, I just wanted to say that next time we do this, I gotta get you guys to watch it. We're gonna do a like a watch party of that documentary.
Yeah, Merrick's resorting to watch party because he's been asking me to watch this for like 7 months
6 months.
forever. Yeah.
Only because I know he's gonna love it. Because I
know. I'm sure I will.
You eat
I don't
this
know
stuff
why
up too, man. You love this stuff, so.
Yeah.
All right. So where did we leave off? TNG feels pretty well explored. Definitely DS9.
DS9.
And we even did TOS. So let's go on to Voyager. Voyager villains that you feel like define the show. Let me set up the context first. One of the greatest and most unique things about storytelling in Voyager is that, and it's reflected in Star Trek Online. If you go and you look at the Delta Quadrant, it's just a straight line, because our experience of the Delta Quadrant, of the entirety of space in Voyager, is linear, right? A to B to C to D, all in the same direction. So whatever villains you're going to see in this season, it makes no sense for them to be there in season 2. Like you've passed them. You've left their space. Like you're not coming back. These guys are Voyager has a cruising velocity of warp 9.975. This is one of the fastest ships in the galaxy. No one's passing these dudes without weird stuff like transwarp or slipstream or whatever. So they basically just eventually leave whatever antagonists there are beforehand. So whatever villains like we experience, and then they're gone. So what do you guys think? What made an impact in Voyager for you?
I have one, but I think it's one that Merrick might be sad that I steal from him.
Oh.
I think I know what it's going to be.
It's the Vidians.
It's the Vidians. I knew it.
Oh, yeah. They are disturbing.
I leave it to you.
I mean,
please.
They're a great villain race in the sense that, one, they're terrifying, right? Like they beam onto ships, steal people's organs or body parts or whatever they need.
Beam them out of you, man. They beam them out of your body.
Oh my God,
so they're scary and they're weird, but in the couple episodes where you get to learn more about them, especially, I forget her name. Oh, I'm going to be embarrassed. The doctor's friend.
The doctor's friend, yeah.
You eventually learn that, like,
or medical.
Yeah. I cannot think of her name.
For some reason, I want to say T'Pel, which is for sure.
I almost said that too, which is definitely.
Did you really? So it's got to be something similar then.
But they're a good villain because over time you come to sort of, you might not empathize with them or sympathize with them, but you kind of can understand where they're coming from. Like they had this really successful culture with like that was flourishing with art and everything, and this disease that they can't cure hits
the
them,
phage.
and the only way they can prolong their lives is to like sort of graft parts from healthy species onto them. And so it's horrifying and terrible and like really unethical, but you can kind of see where they're coming from, even as they attempt to more than once like murder-ish
and they
everyone on Voyager.
They do imply in that episode with the Doctor's friend that that not all of them have the phage, right?
Yeah, because she talked about what it's like when your friends like figured out that she had it and don't want to be around her anymore.
So I feel like it is not necessarily all
she was like 8 years
Vidians.
old or something.
Yeah,
right, but I think it's like
a subset of the Vidians that.
Well, it must be all the ones we're running into space, because it seems like that's their main motivation to go seek things.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
There was some confusion in chat. Somebody said Kez. So the Doctor definitely had some feelings for Kez, I would say, but it's more. There was a Vidian who he ends up. It was a Vidian woman who was not evil. She was dying though, and he put her into a coma, her body into a coma, and then projected her mind into a holographic body. So she was actually able to live phage free, shall we say, for like a week or something like that. And then he ended up actually saving her life. She still has the phage, right? He couldn't cure that. But then later she comes back to help because they have some sort of issue.
When
it was
Chakotay and Janeway
get sick. Yeah, and they get left behind on a planet. They end up reaching out to the Vidians, which ends up, Tuvok was right, by the way. They end up definitely coming to try to steal all of their organs. But the doctor, the female doctor who the Doctor had saved before, did end up providing what they needed to rescue the captain and Tuvok. I can't remember her name, and it's going to drive me crazy.
I might just Google it at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, Venwick says Kess.
No, that's what I was saying. Yeah, not Kess, but also
Merrick. We were close with thinking T'Pel. Her last name is Pell.
Pell.
Oh my god!
And her first name she was Dinara Pell.
Dinara Pell.
She could have been D'Pel instead of T'Pel.
I should know this. I feel bad. Yeah. But yes, the Vidians were a nightmare. In fact, the last time I watched Voyager again, my reaction was, holy crap, like I'd forgotten how vicious and horrific of a villain Star Trek was willing to make in the 90s. Like they were grotesque, monstrous, right, in appearance, and unapologetic in their harvesting of organs from other people. Like the first time we see them, they beam Neelix's lungs right out of his body, and we have to watch him dying and freaking out with no lungs for that whole episode. That's a traumatizing Star Trek. Okay, that's crazy.
I mean, the one where they split B'Elanna into human and Klingon. Also,
yes.
Nightmare episode.
Yes.
Graft that guy's face onto him.
And then that guy was like obsessed with B'Elanna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to be honest. On my last rewatch, that episode makes me so uncomfortable that I skipped it.
No way! Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
It does. The episode doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me mad or anything, but it makes me just feel intensely uncomfortable watching those scenes.
Yeah.
I understand. There's a couple of episodes of Star Trek that make you want to do that. That's definitely true. We were recently talking about one of the ones in TNG that I experienced that with. I don't like that one where the Admiral ages backwards. That episode.
That one.
It's terrible. It's really not good. Aging prosthetics, like makeup, is not good, and his acting is also not great. And the younger he gets, the more impetuous he becomes, and the whole episode is not fun to watch. It's just
I enjoyed it. Just because you get to see Picard, you kind of see that conviction in Picard too as well, right? For all the things that he does do. Because at the end of that episode, I mean, the one that's navigating that whole new, generation of it is Picard. He's the one that convinces all of them, right, to stop what they're doing and look towards peace and stuff. So
yeah, it wasn't.
I mean, I enjoyed it. Yeah, it wasn't the Admiral. It just goes, it goes to show like a product of Picard's strength that you can see, you can take away from. So I like that episode. But on the topic of Voyager, though, when it comes to the villains and stuff, for sure Vidians. But for me, I think of all time, and it's just I gotta talk about it on behalf of my dad too. But Species 8472, let's go, dude. That one is hype for me.
It changes everything. It puts everything in a weird perspective.
Borg runs away, and the Borg has to be feared, right? But
I remember the actual moment, with the moment where they were like, all these Borg are going somewhere, and they're like, there's this weird sector of space where there's nothing there. It's right in the middle of the Northwest Passage, exactly, where there's no Borg traffic, and they're theorizing what's going on, and all of a sudden someone says, it could be this, or there might be a species that is even scarier than the Borg, like that they're terrified of.
When they find the wrecked cube, they're like, who could do this to the Borg?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Oh man, and
what a fantastic idea.
Because that is the turning point for all of Voyager. That's Scorpion. That's Scorpion episodes 1 and 2. That's the break from season 3 to season 4, which is right when that show picks up and never lets up again. I mean, it's so good from then on. And it's the first episode of the inclusion of 7 of 9, which is the paradigm shift that show really needed. And and again, the inclusion of 8472, like the amount of money they spent on that was big. Like the giant battle scenes, fluidic space, up until that scene, fun fact, there had never been on any movie or TV show leading up to that episode more than one Borg ship on the screen at the same time.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Never.
Really?
That episode showed like 15 cubes at the same time, and they were all wrecked. One of my favorite scenes ever is when, remember after they make the agreement and Janeway is on the Borg ship and they're towing Voyager, and Voyager's like about to get damaged, and the 8472 ship is doing its giant laser thing, and the Borg ship beams everything onto Voyager and flies in front and takes the hit, and it explodes. Like none of these things had been seen in Star Trek before. This was like a groundbreaking experience of this giant new threat that they had to team up with the Borg to defeat. Great writing.
The CGI epic. When 8472 blows up the Borg planet was also pretty incredible.
So good. It was like 9 of them linked together into that giant thing. Which, by the way, what is it called? DS9 is often given flack for its likeness to and potential borrowing from, we don't know the details, but from another TV show. Does anyone want to throw out what that might be? Babylon 5, anyone? Did anyone watch Babylon 5 back in the day?
I
so
did.
there's a lot of drama. There's a lot of drama about it. A lot of people say that like those two shows were very similar and that there was too much of a vacuum and only one was going to survive, but most people say that it was
from Babylon 5 on, right?
They did. There's
like not big one.
There's some interesting history there for sure, but if you dig up, most of the details point to Babylon 5 kind of being the thing that got shafted, and it was an interesting reference as well, because the ship, the 8472 ship, is very similar to one of the ships of a prevalent alien race in Babylon 5, and even did that like combined laser shoot thing. It was very, very similar, but very, very cool, and I think really helped define the rest of the show. 8472 was a big deal. That was a really interesting and cool villain. I'm actually ashamed it didn't come up earlier in my head of like the greatest villains.
I didn't for me either until Justin said it, but it makes a ton of sense. I also love that they brought them back later when they find the training grounds for 8472 to infiltrate Starfleet Academy.
Yes. Yeah, with the groundskeeper.
You get
Boothby. Oh, I love him so much. He was also in a movie that I grew up watching. He was really good. It's a good actor. That's a great that was like a weird, almost Changeling-esque vibe that happened in Voyager, right? That was really interesting.
And right when you want more of Species 8472, Star Trek Online coming in clutch again.
There it is.
Yeah,
that's true.
You actually kick off the whole game story with 8472. It's like the first thing you do.
And you can fly the bioships.
You can, yes.
Yes, you can.
Can I mention Seska, who, oh my god, so that actress is so good at what she does.
I forget her name.
With that character. But I just despise Seska, the character,
Jennifer
so much.
Hates her so much.
Oh my god, like those episodes are so hard because like it's just like, oh, what are you doing now?
Yeah, that actress also in DS9. Was she in TNG as well? I can't remember.
I don't remember about TNG. I was going to quiz you guys on what other show she was in. Yes, and it was in DS9.
That's guarding the cloak.
She was the cloaking Romulan, and it was one of the weirdest things ever.
She's there for like what, one episode?
Just a couple. She's there for a couple, and in fact, she was in. Remember, she survived long enough to go into the episode where they were all put in this weird combined dream state where they imagined the Dominion coming in and taking over or whatever. Like, she was a part of all of that. She was eventually killed off, and then they were like, well, I guess you're just going to have the cloaking device. We're never going to mention this Romulan deal ever again. It was one of the weirdest inconsistencies ever that I don't... Listen, I loved that the Defiant had the cloaking device, and it was really the only way to get around the Treaty of Algeron, right? Like that... There's just no other way to not be really bad about the history and how we're not allowed to have cloaking devices. But I do wish they would have followed up with it with the Romulans. There was not enough inclusion of Romulans to begin with. I thought that whole thing about them being left out was very pointed. In the Pale Moonlight was one of the greatest episodes of all of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and that was very Romulan-esque. But while it could maybe have been that the actress needed to go and play a larger role in Voyager, it would make sense in that way. I wish they would have had a different actress continue that dynamic, because I thought that was really cool. And actually, it's been a while since I've watched this enough to really point out what happened. But the Defiant eventually exploded and was replaced by...
And as a cloaking device still.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. The Defiant was destroyed and replaced by the USS Sao Paulo, which would then they got special dispensation to rename the Defiant. Cloak? But do they ever cloak again? That was my follow-up question. Like, do we know that was a failure or not? Like, I can't remember.
I'm gonna on my next rewatch, I will focus on that.
Yeah, same. I gotta know. So interesting. But Seska is a character that you can't overlook because she is one of the most complicated, like, interesting characters. Like, she, you know what I mean? She was a spy.
She's a Cardassian.
Like, everyone takes in the Maquis,
everyone
but she's actually a Cardassian.
Was not a Maquis. Except Alana.
Poor Chakotay, man. That scene where he goes to Tuvok and goes, am I just like especially gullible? Was it everyone was against me? You were working for her, she was working for the Cardassians. Was anyone on that ship working for me?
Yeah, and then Tuvok gets confused why he feels better that Tuvok didn't figure it out, and he's just like, misery loves company.
Misery loves company. Yeah.
I feel like
somehow my failure added to your own should somehow make you feel better.
One of my favorite Seska episodes is actually long after she's been gone. It's the one where they discover Tuvok's security training program, and everyone thinks it's like almost like a holo novel.
It is. It's a holo novel that they all love. It's the Insurrection holo novel.
Real mad that Tuvok didn't finish it.
Yeah, and then they fight over finishing it. Tom wants to finish it, and he's like doing dramatic, stupid stuff, and Tuvok gets very
sorry. Real tangent, but I love that in the finale of Voyager, we find out that Tom went on to become a holo novelist.
Oh, I know.
It makes so much sense for his character. Not to mention that he's like super into television, that he was super into holo novels like Captain Proton and stuff. Like, it actually just builds and builds. It makes perfect sense that he would do that.
But yeah, that Seska episode where like she embedded like revenge into this training program for when Tuvok goes to edit it.
Yeah, God, that's so good. It was a great like return to her character, and bringing her back, which I love when they do that. You know, it was kind of like her Sela episode.
Yeah.
So I think if we're gonna move, like, does that encompass most of what you would think of in terms of major consistent? I mean, you can't not bring up the Kazon, but I kind of tend to ignore them.
I'm okay with putting off the Kazon
because they are probably the worst, one of the worst villains. I mean, they're maybe better than the original Ferengi, but I would say that,
but not by much.
Not by much. They were never great, and not only were they were already bad, and then you find out that their ships and their technology and everything that they've got are not even theirs. Remember, they stole all of that from another species that was enslaving them. And I'm feeling quite bad now that I can't remember the name of the species.
I can't remember it either. I remember like the peace conference that Voyager puts together between the two.
Then they were tricked into trying to kill all of them.
To wipe out all the Kazon leaders.
Yeah.
I can't think of the name either.
Nope, it's not even on the edge of my tongue. Anyone in chat?
I mean, what about the writing towards the Anoraks. That one was really cool too.
Oh, Anoraks.
Okay. Now, there's somebody that from
cool.
the very get-go, right? From the moment that the episode starts, you sympathize for this dude. For the captain, who's not named Anoraks, right? Isn't Anoraks the name of the... Oh, no, it is. He's Anoraks.
He's Anoraks.
Yeah.
He's Anoraks.
Yeah.
And the name of the species?
The Krenim.
The Krenim.
Krenim,
The Krenim.
yeah.
Good job. The Krenim... Remember, they come across that like dinky little ship in the beginning.
Oh yeah, and he's like threatening.
You will get out of our space, and he's got this like crappy little ship with lasers, and it can't do anything to him.
Because Janeway says, unless you've got something bigger in your torpedo tubes,
then I'm not going anywhere. But then the temporal shockwave hits, and then it becomes super big and bad. A lot of the credit maybe not so great, but Anoraks you feel immediately bad for. I felt a lot of sympathy for Red from that 70s show. I'm just gonna say that was a tough one. That was a tough one. He lost his wife, and no matter what he did, he couldn't get his wife back. And I think that 2-part episode is probably one of the best in all of Voyager, and ends with an awesome.
Oh, it was
ending.
a fantastic ending because it
Yeah,
just showed.
Jennifer forgot the ending.
I forgot the ending, and we just watched it the other day, and that's such a fantastic thing. Like, he tried everything except just getting rid of his ship.
Dude, well, that's the thing. He didn't even conceive of that, right? Like, so in case anyone out there who's watching this may not know, the Trabe! Thank you, Van Wyck. It's the Trabe for the race
Kazon
that had the
people.
Kazon. Yes. Van Wyck, you rock. No, but the... With Anoraks, right? Like the way that ship worked is that it would remove something that from the ship was a giant weapon, and anything that it shot would be removed from all time, as if it never existed at any time. And so they would remove a planet, they'd remove a colony, a species entirely, trying to undo the damage that the temporal war had caused and get his original outpost back that had his wife and family, and that's what he was trying to do. In fact, at one point in the story, they got to a restoration of 98%, which to them was as crazy as it is to us. Like, that's crazy that they managed to get 98% of their entire species back, but that 2% included his wife, right? So he couldn't do it, and nothing worked. And then finally, you don't even think about it. In the end, the big twist is that the ship itself gets removed from time.
From time, yeah.
And then
he undoes all the things that he did.
Undoes everything that it did. And it rewinds all of it, and it puts him back with his wife. And the cool thing about that, if you think about it, is the ship is removed from time entirely. So he's there ignoring his wife doing computations. Remember? She's like, it's a beautiful day, come for a walk. And I think normally he would have said no.
Didn't he say something like he says something about time?
He puts it off. And he's like, well, no, I got all these things I got to do. And she's like, it's a beautiful day. Please spend it with me. And he goes, I think I've got time, right? Yeah. And then he gets up and does. It's not just that it rewound to a time that he's destined to remake the ship. The ship gets removed from time entirely. So whatever this is this beautiful new timeline where he's not going to make that freaking ship, and then he's happily ever after with his wife. I just thought that's writing, man. That's good Star Trek writing. I just love that. So good.
Now I watched it with you guys.
Yeah, dude, we did a watch party with that.
We did a watch party with that. Yeah.
That was good. That was really good.
Yeah.
Where are we at with time, guys? I actually don't have the time.
We're coming up on 2 hours.
Yeah, we're coming up on just about the end here.
Okay, so let's call it now. I feel like this is probably a good time.
I think we covered a lot of great villains and why we think they're great.
Some of the greatest villains. I'll go off on like a small, tiny tangent here before we end. And that is that we haven't gone to any of the new Trek in terms of like Strange New Worlds. And I just want to say that the... actually, what I should have said is, we are strong.
Oh, no.
We look for things to make us go.
No, that was such a... that was... Yeah, in the original series, that episode, they drive me crazy.
TNG,
yeah, the TNG, sorry.
Anyway... Lower Decks is phenomenal for doing that. It's the perfect villain for them to do. But Strange New Worlds, I just wanted to reference the Gorn. Okay, so the Gorn is a great discussion to have in terms of villain because they were, ridiculous. First of all, they went the whole gambit. They were ridiculous in TOS, absolutely silly. In fact, it was very much the Ferengi, where the whole episode is like them chasing him, and then finally you see him and they fight him, and it's one of the most iconic moments in all of Star Trek for being the cheesiest thing ever filmed, right? Just absolutely terrible. And then it's brought into Enterprise, where they're like, hey, we have CGI now. It's terrible CGI. We're not good at this yet, but that was in that 90s frame where we're going to do it anyway. You know, like, we're really bad at this, but we're going to do it anyway. In fact, we should be very grateful that TNG and DS9 did so little of it. Even Voyager did very little of it. They did like 8472. It doesn't look great, right? Like the CGI is not phenomenal, but in the 90s they were willing to do it. And Enterprise did it with a couple of species that we never really had seen, which included the Gorn and also the Tholians. These are two races that before then were just kind of like flat two-dimensional puppet things or a terrible rubber suit. And so it was kind of cool to see them redo this a little bit, but it was really cringe in Enterprise also. And now with Strange New Worlds, holy crap, are they building it up to be, you know,
I'm
alien, bro. Like, it's alien.
Like, it's scary. Yeah.
Well, also, it also just
scary.
makes me so happy because, and I don't consider this like a retcon thing at all, but the fact that they've made the Gorn so terrifying, and in the original series, Kirk just like fights off the Gorn, and that just makes that much cooler.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So now they actually took the time, right? The CGI is much better now. And in Strange New Worlds, they actually took a couple episodes to make us scared of them first before we even see them. So like, and even when we did see them, they were just babies, remember? So we've never seen an adult Gorn. They've built it up
it turns out
so
their skin
darn much.
rubberizes as they get older.
and they slow down. They get really slow motion.
It's the babies that are terrifying.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, it's the babies.
I just hope that it pays off, because they really spent a whole season building up to this, like the trauma that La'an has gone through. So let's see how it goes. But anyway, lots of great villains to come in future Star Trek. So very exciting things. Anyway, one last big shout out to Louise Fletcher, who died yesterday. She will be missed forever. Kai Wynn will be immortalized for all time. All of the Trekkies out there, all of us included, have nothing but the utmost respect for this person. I just want to say something really cool about her, in case you guys don't know. She actually won an Academy Award. She got Best Actress in the 70s for doing Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is a great, phenomenal movie, and one of the greatest acceptance speeches I'd ever seen. It always made me tear up. When she got up, first of all, her parents are deaf. And when she got up on stage and she gave her acceptance speech, and at one point she said, I'm sorry, but I got to do this. And she basically signs to her parents and speaks and signs out saying, like, thank you so much, Mother and Father, for giving me the opportunity to have a dream. You are looking at my dream coming true right now. And she signs this in front of everybody to her deaf parents. It was a beautiful moment. She's a phenomenal actress and will be terribly missed. So this is a tribute to her. We really appreciate what you've done. And we also really appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. This has been the Night Shift Podcast, or Padcast, if you will. We do this every single week, Saturday nights, somewhere between 9 and 10 p.m. Eastern. Technical difficulties notwithstanding. Please come and join our Discord. Hopefully one of you guys are typing that in the chat right now. This is where we sort of communicate what we're streaming, when we're streaming it, when the podcast is going to be live, all that good stuff. Great place to be. Great Star Trek community to be a part of. We play STO. We do Twitch streams as well, so check us out on twitch.tv/Merrick TV. And then we also do watch parties and all sorts of great stuff. So please, if you like this, if this is in your ballpark of things that you enjoy, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, like the video. It really helps the channel a lot. We're very small and trying to grow. Tell your friends about this if you got Trekkies in your life. We are one of the most welcoming communities around. If you're looking for more Trekkie friends, promise you this is the best place to be. I just want to thank the Night Shift guys. You guys are amazing. Justin there, he's on Twitch as well at twitch.tv/OneFocus. You guys can get all the links in this in the Discord. Also, Jennifer streams also at twitch.tv/Junivision. And Azure is just handsome and wonderful, and we love him, and thank you for being a part of it. You guys are the best. We'll see you all next week on the Night Shift. Thanks, guys.
Bye.